There we go. Hi. Hi.
Oh,
Hi, it's so nice to see you. Oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. I'm thrilled to do this. Are you kidding?
hi, everyone. Welcome, everyone, on this Yom Kippur day. And it's such a joy and such an honor to welcome Julianna Margulies here with us on this Yom Kippur. As you reminded me, we've known each other for a frightening 30 years.
Yeah, I can't believe the math. When I did it, I thought, oh my God. It's great.
Oh my gosh. I'm just blown away by you. I always have been. And it's funny when you wrote to me just what I took from your book. It's not that I didn't know your story, it's that I didn't know it.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of my friends have had that reaction.
Yeah. And as I said to you when I first started reading, it's like, it's one thing to have a story, because everybody has a story. It's another thing to be able to share the story with both sadness and seeing the humor in it. And you always find a way to see the humor in it, not just the heartbreak in it. And I think that's a great message for everybody, honestly. It's certainly been a great message for me.
It was a great message for me writing it, honestly. It was very cathartic.
Yeah.
When I finally, you could edit, you've written so many books, but you could keep editing for the rest of your life to make it perfect. And when I finally had to let it go, I felt really free and calm, strangely.
Well, it's weird because it's just exactly the work we're supposed to be doing on Yom Kippur, frankly, is this kind of reviewing. And that's what your book did. It was like a reviewing, a cleansing, a working through of all these things that I can't wait to talk to you about. But first, I want to introduce you properly.
Okay.
So for everybody, Julianna Margulies has been a remarkable success in film and television and theater. And she's most recognizable to all of you who are with us today for her groundbreaking work in the TV show ER, and then for her amazing groundbreaking work in The Good Wife, which she also produced. And both shows earned her 3 Emmys, a Golden Globe, and 8 Screen Actors Guild Awards. And I'm very excited that she'll be appearing in the new season of the morning show for Apple TV very shortly. And she's also been recently seen in Billions and in The Hot Zone, which was eerily prescient for our COVID pandemic. She sits on the board of the MCC Theater Company and is a huge advocate for Aaron's Law and for Project ALS. Thank you. Thank you for this incredible discussion on the holiest day of the year. And Lord, it's funny. My mom grew up in Poland. I mean, she was born in Poland and very poor. And her grandpa was a shoemaker. But of course, as you know, the shoemaker's children and grandchildren no new shoes. But when they were leaving to come to this country, he made her very first and only pair of new shoes. And she came here not knowing a word of English. And she came to school on the first day so proud of those shoes. And of course, in her case, it was all tinged with, she wouldn't know this until many years later, that was the last time she'd ever seen. Her whole family was slaughtered. But she came to school with those shoes and so proud. And of course, the first thing was just ridicule for her immigrant shoes.
Oh, gosh.
And it's always been such a sad story to me. It happened to my mother once. And then I'm starting to read your book. And it doesn't happen to you once. It happens to you over and over and over again, everywhere you go. And for those of you who haven't read this book, get this book, Sunshine Girl. I mean, just the sheer number of times that you had to make yourself over, from your accent to your outfit. And it was very similar tone to me. It like really hit home, like that pretty Laura Ashley dress or that little cape. And you felt so proud only to come into school in a new country, and that what you're wearing is totally embarrassing. So I guess my question is for you, and you know what, today you're going to be our rabbi, because that's how I'm seeing you.
Oh, I'm honored.
How did you learn over time to honor yourself and to find your center? And how do we all learn to stop changing to please others? What does it mean for us to retain our souls when we all have this tendency to try to accommodate, to just please everyone?
Yeah, isn't that the question of the day, every day? I think, well, first of all, the title of the book, I was very reticent to give the book that title because it sounds like, oh, she's fabulous. And my editor said, but you talk about being the sunshine girl throughout the whole book. That is the theme of the book. And I had to reread it again. And I realized it's absolutely the message I need to give, which is Sunshine Girl was my mother's nickname for me, which I really did wear as a badge of honor, because it meant that I was the ray of light in everyone's life. I walked into a room and could create calmness and joy, and people would feel good around me. What a heavy burden to give a little girl, especially when that little girl is constantly ripped away from her comfort zone. And when I say comfort zone, I don't just mean a house. I mean father, ripped away from my father, ripped away from my eldest sister, put into every situation, ripped away from boyfriends of hers that I actually really liked, and then they were taken away from me. But I had this moniker, Sunshine Girl. And in a certain way, that also saved me. And writing this book has been cathartic in that I have seen how devastating holding that title can be, because it puts so much pressure. It means I can never be sad. It means when I was a child, I never felt that I could voice my disappointments or my wishes, because I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to stir the mud. I wanted everyone to just be happy. It was so interesting. Today, I was just talking to someone about my 11-year-old self. They had read the book and they said, there's a moment in the book you talk about when you're in this makeshift 1-bedroom apartment with your sister and your mother, and the tables are lopsided, the floors are lopsided, and you're trying to hold milk, and you just fall in love with your this horse that I found on a marsh. And so there's a long way of going about saying what got me through so much of my childhood, and where I found, it's bizarre that I'm in my bedroom in upstate New York. There's horses behind me, but I do have to say, my passion and love of horses as a little girl got me through so much.
Wow. Wow. You know, it's so interesting. The Jewish philosopher Martin Buber, he was very famous for was talking about how so often we find ourselves in what he called I-it relationships. An I-it relationship means I'm in this relationship, but I need you for something. I need you to be something in my life. It's like there's like a utility to the relationship. And then he talks about what a holy relationship is. And a holy relationship is called I thou, or in modern English, I you. Like, I see you, not because you're this or that or sunshine or brilliant or pretty or even kind. I just see you. And that's what he talks about, what we can be with God.
Yeah.
But why I'm bringing this up is his very first I thou relationship that led him to really understand was with a horse.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
I understand that.
There's nobody's judging you.
Right.
Looking into each other's eyes, and there's just I thou, I you, I understand you, I see you, right, on a soul level. And that was his first.
Yeah, it's a very spiritual connection.
Very spiritual.
And horses have this, they're majestic and they're powerful.
Yes.
They're very powerful beasts.
Yes.
And I think there was also something for me, which was that my father had really championed me riding when I was 7. And my mother, who had been a ballerina, was so afraid of horses that she tolerated my love for them, but she didn't involve herself with it. Mm-hmm. So when she took me away from my father when I was 11 to go live in England, and I found this horse on a marsh who was wild and untamed.
I love that story.
Yeah, because I'm so glad, because I didn't realize till I started writing it how integral that story is to who I am. I can
tell it.
I can. Okay. Well, really, so it had been a tumultuous year, and my mother suddenly decided we were actually supposed to move to Nuremberg, Germany, and she did no research. Mind you, this was, the 70s, the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And I guess people did things differently then. I do understand that. But last minute, she hated Nuremberg, and I was with my father for the summer in New York, and she said, change the tickets, we're going to England, where we had lived once before when I was very little. During the time that I was in the States, before I got to England when I was 11, I had fallen in love with horses, and my father had really made the effort to find me riding lessons. He bought me my first riding helmet, my first blazer that I got to show horses in, and I had such passion for this, this newfound love. And there I was in England. My mother, when I lived with my mother, we were always very poor, which was also very confusing as a child.
It seems really confusing in the book, like that you went from like this lavish life to this really harsh poverty life.
It was on the poverty level, and I never understood it, because when I was with my father, who lived on 89th Street and Madison Avenue, and we would go and eat at Tavern on the Green, and we would go and see a chorus line and a Vita, and I went to horseback riding camp. But there was just this sort of glamorous life with my glamorous stepmother who wore Chanel suits. And then I'd get off the plane jet lagged and bleary eyed, not knowing what school I was going to. And there's my mother absolutely in a panic because she can't figure out how to drive on the other side of the road, or, does the car is this a stick shift? There's no clutch. And the panic of not knowing how anything works, and then driving into our new home. And it was so mind boggling, but because my middle sister was very dreamy and melancholic. My mother labeled all of us, right? And I think most parents do that. I don't think it's so strange. But what you realize as you grow up and become a parent yourself is how detrimental those labels can be. It's why I loved Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, because she says I chose that title to stop people from asking kids, so what are you going to be when you grow up?
Mhm.
Let us become who we are.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that struck me so hard when I read that in her book. I was like, oh my God, no wonder. I was always like, I can do it. I can do it. We can do this. And my mother had this saying she would say to us when we were living in England. And so scared, we were scared, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
She said, let's just stick it out for the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can always go home.
Yeah.
So what she was saying to me was, you're going to stick it out for the year. We can do this,
Yeah.
which then presents it as a challenge rather than an obstacle, right?
Right.
I don't think she was conscientious of that actual, that that's what she was doing. But in my mind, because I was a competitive athlete, I went, I can do it. I can stick this out for a year and then everyone will love me even more, right? I can do this for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because already I was seeing that my teenage sister, who was already 14 and really miserable, she voiced her misery. She voiced it loud and clear.
Yeah. And sometimes it
And
doesn't seem fair. You know, in families, there's one child who's given permission, or they give themselves permission, they're allowed.
she was allowed because she was the melancholy one. That's just Rachel,
Yeah.
right?
And yours was to be the keeper of the light. And I just kept thinking about that. Like, yes, the burden of it. And then I kept thinking, just what you're saying, the burden of it. And then again, there is a blessing in it.
There's a blessing to it.
Yeah.
Because it allowed myself to see myself in a very strong light,
yeah.
right? It gave me, strangely, it gave me power.
Yes.
As much as it debilitated me, right? As much as it took me years until I realized, oh, I've never been able to really say how I feel. This doesn't feel right. I would just be quiet and don't stir the mud. Even though I was strong as a woman, you know, it's a strange juxtaposition, right? Because everyone saw me as so strong in my job and how I handled myself and that I could always take care of myself, always.
Yeah.
And yet I was timid to speak up and to say my feelings and to say, this doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel good, because I knew if I could stick it out for a year, I would make everyone happy.
I just see that whatever skill set, whatever the skill set that life brings you, not that school brings you, that taught you how to accommodate, whether it's to your, being the child of such wildly different parents and going from one home to the other, or going from France to England to Germany to the US and here and there, that who would know that that was actually the training ground for what it would give you, the skill set it would give you to be a superb actor.
Thank you. It was the best acting school I could have ever gone to. Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
It's all about turning what anybody would agree is like a big curse into an incredible blessing.
Right. It's the silver lining.
But you
of all of it. Yeah.
You did it. It didn't just happen.
No, but I think, I came from a very artistic family. My father was a writer, my mother a dancer, my eldest sister a dancer, my middle sister was a musician. And I always thought I'm the intellect. I took my studies so seriously. I wanted to be the opposite of all of them, honestly.
You are an intellect.
Right. But I wanted to use that intellect in an academic setting.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be a worthy calling for me. I really thought that was the right calling for me.
Uh-huh.
But what I realized when I got to college was the second the arts is just in my blood. And the schools I went to, I had to be in a play every year. You didn't have a choice. It was just part of your life. You had to play an instrument. It was very, very artistic. And so I had such a heavy academic schedule. I thought, well, I understand the arts, so I'll take an acting class that will just at least alleviate some of the pressure from this academic schedule. And I remember this moment as a freshman when I was in my first college play, very small part, but the feeling of belonging when that curtain went up, the first night we performed, I knew so deeply inside my body and my soul that this was all I could do.
Wow.
It was that, that Oprah talks about, that aha moment,
Yeah.
which for someone who had tried to be other people her whole life, had tried to have the right accent, understand the right dress code, want so much to have the family that she thought was the perfect family, and made a lot of things up. It was already in my DNA. There was no way I was going to be able to do anything else, because I mean, the beauty of it is that I do believe that all my academics in college absolutely play into being an actress. I don't for a minute think any actor should ever just study acting, because acting is portraying life. And if you don't know about life and you're not curious about all the other parts of life, then you're not doing your job as an actor. And so I feel so grateful. I often wonder what would have happened if I had been labeled the melancholic one.
Yeah.
And my middle sister
had like a boring suburban life.
Right. Or if exactly.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
But that, you can want,
boring, but
yeah.
regular life, maybe it wouldn't have shaped you in such a way.
Well, it wouldn't have.
Like life is lived with this kind of, in retrospect, all the pieces fall together.
Of course.
When you're living it, when you're going through it, all you can see is when will things settle down, or why am I going through this? But in your book and in your life, what's so beautiful is everything falls into place and suddenly it all makes sense.
Right.
Not that anybody deserves to have to suffer, but that you were able to put all of that pain to use for a good purpose.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, I do have to say the luxury of acting is to dig deep.
Yeah.
Right. So through my work that I actually could get paid for, I was actually doing some deep diving into who I am as a human being.
I love watching you act, and because I know you off the screen, it's really something. Just the way you're able to inhabit a character, it's a thing of beauty. It really is.
Thank you. Well, there's for a while I thought, I love putting on someone else's shoes.
Yes.
Because there was a real freedom for me being the sunshine girl and having to sort of always say the right thing and make people happy. Getting to play someone like Alicia Florrick and putting on her high heels and her tight suits, and then just saying a line like, I can't come up with one right now, or not speaking at all.
Yeah.
Which I love, these silences. It was heaven. Or not caring if someone hated what I said, because I play another character. I have no responsibility as Julianna.
Yeah, I love
There's such a freedom in acting for me to be able to play these characters, because I get to be outside of myself, and it's indulgent. Honestly, I feel like it's indulgent. And it is in a certain way, I love it. I love being able to shed my skin. It's a relief.
Well, I see it as an enormous gift that keeps giving, and that, whatever this road is that you took, and I think we all do, we take turns, and we think that was a left-hand turn. We think, what the heck? What am I doing here? in this
Right.
godforsaken place. And then you find out that that place led to this place, led to that place, led to you.
Naomi, that is so amazing that you just said that, because the original title for my book was A Left Instead of a Right.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Because I was always felt like I was taking a left turn. I never was going in directly. I was trying to find my way through the back door somehow.
Wow.
And that was the original name of the book. So you got it. You absolutely got it. But that is, there's tremendous, I wouldn't change it for a thing. Yeah. Right? Because I love my life now. And that's why the subtitle of the book is An Unexpected Life.
Yes. I mean, for those of you, one of the things that I think about when I think about you, if I just have to call you up in my mind, is one word: grounded. Incredibly grounded. And just that you should all know, like, if somebody comes to your house or something and there's a thank you, most people send you a little text, Julianna, it's a handwritten thank you note. If she comes to your house, let's say for Passover, it's not a can of Manischewitz macaroons, and it's not macaroons from a fancy bakery. It's handmade macaroon. When my son was born, most people would buy you something from Baby Gap or from some other nice children's store. Julianna knitted a little sweater for my son, not some, schleppy thing. I mean, with all these very intricate designs. That's who you are. And I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit about, because it's so jarring how ungrounded your childhood was, how ungrounded your mom was in particular. And again, how that taught you the opposite, what that shaped in.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I had a moment with my son during the pandemic. And I'm thinking of this because of what you just asked, where I yelled, and it wasn't a good moment for me. It wasn't my proudest moment. I was just overwhelmed with the housework, and we all were, right? And with the housework, and I was finishing the book, and I was also doing a voiceover for a documentary, and I was cleaning, and I was shopping, and I was cooking, and then I yelled. And I went back into his room a few minutes later, and I apologized. And I said, I'm really sorry. That wasn't right. You did not warrant me yelling. And I apologize to you, and I hope you can accept my apology. I'm under a lot of stress. I think we all are. And I was just having a really bad moment, and the timing was just bad when you asked me for one more thing. But that did not deserve you to be yelled at. And please accept my apology.
I love that.
And he went, Mom, I get it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And it was over. Easy peasy over. What I realized in that moment was that no one had ever taken in my feelings as a child. No one had ever apologized to me. Like, it was not part of the dialogue. The dialogue was, this is what we're doing. Figure it out. Sorry. And there was so I felt, even though I was loved, my parents loved me, and I write the book out of love for them. I dedicate the book to them.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel seen or heard, because I wasn't speaking up, right? Because I was a sunshine girl. And I realized in that moment as a parent, what a gift I was giving my son for his life, I was seeing him, I saw, I heard, and I apologized, which will allow him, hopefully, to grow up to be a conscientious human being and also know that actually apologizing is pretty powerful. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign actually of gratitude.
And that's, I mean, there isn't a bigger Yom Kippur theme than forgiveness, giving it, and asking for it. Nothing bigger. And to me, it's a very huge lesson in your book about how you get to the place of forgiveness towards your mom and towards your dad, and ultimately towards yourself.
Right, right. Yeah.
Do you have any message for people watching about what that means and how one goes about doing that work?
It's work. It's a lot of work. But here's what I'll tell you.
What you learned.
What I learned was that I cannot bear to live with toxicity in my heart. I love doing drama for a living. I don't want it in my home. I want my family and my relationships, my personal relationships, to be my safe place, the place where I go to find cover from this crazy world, where I can find solace and care and love. And I realized young with my mom, I was 23 with my mother, when I insisted she apologized to me for a plethora of things she had put me through. But the one that was crippling me the most was I had suffered 3 years of high school living with her and her 21-year-old boyfriend.
That was like what I called you in the book. I called Julianna. I had gotten to where she was 14. And I said, I've known you for all these years. And I knew, but I didn't know. And I'm just like, it's intense. And you said to me, Naomi, just wait, it gets worse. And I was like, how could it get worse?
You hadn't even gotten to high school yet. I was like, oh my God, she's going to freak out.
Yeah, it did get worse.
So that was a very trying time for me.
I don't know if I stepped on your words. What happened?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Just that my high school years, also because from sophomore, junior, and senior, not only was I living in New Hampshire suddenly, a place I had no connection to, but I was living with my mother and her 21-year-old boyfriend. I was 15.
And your mother was?
My mother was 46. And my sister, my eldest sister, who lived in California at the time, my eldest sister was 6 months younger than her boyfriend. So to me, I was like, you're such an idiot. You can't do the math. My mother lied about her age. I think she told him she was 35. I was like, oh my God.
I love and you looked at his cheek and he has acne.
First thing I noticed. So I had built up a lot of anger. And then, of course, during that time, my father, who had been living in New York City, so at least we were in the same country, he up and moved back to London, where we had been begging my mother to leave so we could be with my father.
Yeah.
So I had 1 year in America with my dad, and then he goes off to London, and we're stuck in New Hampshire, Wilton, New Hampshire. By the way, I think I was the only Jew there. I mean, I wish I had known Sarah Silverman, but she was in Manchester, I think. Like, there were no Jews in New Hampshire, and I'm living with this, I called him her man-child, and I was angry. That's when my anger started to really surface. But I was so focused on trying to make my life something worth living that my studies, I just buried myself in my academics. I buried myself in the idea that if I could grin and bear it for 3 years, he would be there for her when I was gone. because I wanted to just go to college and start my life.
So did you get her to apologize?
So when I was 23, it just hit me like a ton of bricks how much anger I was holding towards her.
Yes.
And how every time she called me, of course, she broke up with him the second I left, the second I graduated.
Of course.
Of course. And she was always trying to connect with me. And I was like, now? You know, she was like, when can I see you? Why don't you call? When are you coming to visit? And every time I'd get so angry inside and I couldn't voice it. And I'm busy. I was waitressing at the time or whatever I was doing. And I woke up one morning and realized why. It's because every time she said, when am I going to see you? Or when are you going to, you don't call me often enough. I was like, oh, because you don't have a boyfriend. Now I'm important in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the writing on the wall and I didn't like the feeling I had towards her. And so I called her and I said, I cannot have a relationship with you until you apologize. And
that took so much courage.
Yes, she was mad. And she was in denial, total denial about any of it because she was embarrassed. And we didn't speak for a year. And that it was hard, but it wasn't as hard as carrying the fake pretending I cared for her when she called, or the guilt I had for not calling. I suddenly felt free from it.
It's such an important thing to just be honest.
Yeah.
Just tell somebody that you love what you need so that you could be in a relationship with them.
Ultimately, that was what I was trying to do. I was saying, I realize there's a block here.
Yeah.
And I need you to fess up and apologize to me. I need that in order to love you.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I love that.
It was big, and God bless her, she did. It took a year.
Yeah.
But I think we both got to grow up and miss each other in that year. Mm-hmm. And she called me and said, I would rather die than not have you in my life. Okay. I feel such shame for what I put you through that I was pretending it didn't happen and I thought it would just go away. And you're right. And how do I make it up to you? And please forgive me.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
He was able to open up like that.
I mean, for all her faults, my mom is always spiritually searching.
Yes, I can see that.
So I got lucky in that, because for her generation, I do think that's that's not the relationship I see with most of my friends and their parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's out there. She's definitely out there. But I said, yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. And now let's move on. Mm-hmm. The same way I said to my son, I'm so sorry. And within a minute, it was over.
Yes. Yes.
I happened to carry it for, 10 years.
Well, Jewish mothers.
Right. But she did. She apologized. And I think what was unfair of me and my sisters, to be honest, was that we always blamed my mother because she was the eccentric, crazy one. She was the one with all the boyfriends and moving here and moving there. None of us held my father accountable for his side.
Yeah. I know that your mom wasn't an easy person, but I totally get that it's very common to sort of idolize the dad. And
mothers get thrown under the bus every time.
And, he had a lot to apologize for too, a lot.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me until I became an adult, until I was having a baby myself, actually.
Yeah.
When I was pregnant. Yeah. And I write about this in the book when I suddenly was like, wait a minute, why are you getting off scot-free?
Yeah. Where were you?
Where were you?
Yeah.
You never met one of my teachers, not one.
Yeah.
You showed up for my high school graduation. That was the first time you saw my school.
Wow.
Like,
I have to just, this scene of your sister Rachel and you schlepping a huge trunk, like the kind that you used to bring, we all would bring to camp when we were
Yeah.
and in Grand Central Station to take the train to take you to college just broke my heart. And I have to imagine, I mean, God willing, someday not so far from now, you'll be doing that with your son.
Oh, I know.
And it's such a momentous day. And you had to have seen all the parents, setting up the rooms and, helping the kids get organized, and no parents. Your sister.
My sister.
And
Thank God.
And thank God, your sister, who is how many years older than you?
3.5.
3.5. She has the presence of mind to fight for you with another mom, like to really fight for you because this other girl took the windows.
Yeah.
Both of them. And then
the only 2 windows, right?
And then I thought to myself, it's a heartbreak, but there's something about that story to me that's again a story about what you 3 young women learned about how you can take care of each other and some kind of inner strength to say, I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to you asking me about when you were talking about, where did I learn to write a handwritten note or show up at your door on Passover with homemade macaroons or knit your baby a sweater. And for me, it means so much to me that other people know I care for them. And I think a lot of it came from the fact that I didn't feel cared for.
Yeah. And you know what? I realized something. Caring isn't I love you. Caring is showing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that you excel at.
Oh, thank you.
And there are so many different magical stories in your book that have to do with something along those lines. Reaching out, and then something magical happens. And the 2 that really stick out for me, the first one is you lost your tooth.
Oh, my tooth.
It was terrible. I mean, it's terrible what happened. And again, nobody's taking care of you. Nobody, like, can you imagine a kid now? Like, you imagine one of our kids, like, we wouldn't be like all over it.
I know.
And you have to, like, what, you find a Yellow Pages and just randomly calling 3 dentists and then you make the call, and then you find somebody who becomes truly a mentor for life.
For life. I mean, he and I joke all the time that he's my surrogate father.
Yeah.
Who I found in the Yellow Pages. But the truth is, especially after my dad suddenly died, he was the one person I called when I couldn't breathe. And he's just been there every step of the way for me. And as I have for him also, but I literally found him in the Yellow Pages.
I love that story. Everybody listening, you never know where your help is going to come from, but you do have to make the call.
Yeah. And there is also something about being self-sufficient, I think, that also helped me. It's something that I found in my career when I would audition. I just knew I didn't want to be really poor and live on a futon with no air conditioning for the rest of my life in a floor through in Brooklyn. I just knew that couldn't be my life.
Yeah.
And because I was really good at waitressing, because I was a good bartender, because I knew how to check coats, I knew how to work. I would go into these auditions with a little bit more of a spine, because it wasn't the end all be all for me, because I was giving myself 5 years.
Yeah.
I know I can always make money and go back to school. There was something about being self-sufficient all through my childhood and college life that made me feel I could conquer the world in a strange way. So I look at, it's such a dichotomy between absolute parents going, oh my God, your parents did what? And also going, but look how competent you are.
Yeah.
And I talk about that too in the book about, my son is living the life I dreamt about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A stable home, happy marriage, good friends, dinner table full of great food and conversation, grandparents who show up all the time, just a life that I dreamt about, truly. And yet I worry daily that I am getting in the way of his struggle. Where's his struggle? And I think it's so important, because you have to find that balance, right? How do you find that balance?
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And still, you shouldn't have had to go through what you went through.
Thank you. I wish I hadn't.
There's a couple more questions I have. I know
Go ahead.
I'll keep you forever. But
I'm good.
One of them is so pertinent to Yom Kippur that I feel like I must ask it, or just share that, is Yom Kippur is all about your fate being sealed and praying that your fate doesn't get sealed, that you want to enter the book of life. You don't want to think that your fate is sealed. And I so remember the day you came to the dog park. I don't know what it was, 30 years ago. I don't know, 29 years ago. At the time, you were just, a regular person, an aspiring actor. And I remember with your little curls, and you were so excited because you had landed a pilot. And the way you described it, like very offhandedly, it was like, I got this pilot, it's so cool, it's amazing. And I die in the pilot. I get killed off in the pilot.
Right.
And then it didn't turn out that way, did it?
Right.
And to me, and you can tell a little bit what happened, but to me, that's a story for all of us to remember, is you may think your fate is sealed, and you may think you know how story ends. You know nothing.
You know nothing. It's so true. And I was so happy just to have gotten the job.
What happened?
So, yeah, I mean, it was a very funny, I got called in to go on an audition for this pilot called ER. Michael Crichton wrote it and Steven Spielberg was producing it. And, that it was huge, big deal. But I was a New York actress in LA, and I wasn't known by the casting directors there. And I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, because in New York, I had gotten my equity card at Yale Rep. I was known in the theater world, and casting directors were bringing me in all the time for pilots. But in LA, I was sort of a wallflower, and they brought me in, and I waited and waited and waited and waited in the waiting room with probably 50 other actors. And 2 hours went by, and I was furious because I had 2 other auditions. I was going to miss them. And I was getting up to leave. I was like, screw it. I don't need to be here. These people have no respect for acting. And as I was about to get up, the casting director, John Levy, called my name, and I went in, and I was pissed off, and I couldn't hide it. So I did the audition for this part that was a recurring character to be the love interest of Dr. Ross. None of us knew who George Clooney was at the time. So he had already been cast in it, but it was some guy named George Clooney. And it would be a recurring, possibly a series regular part. And I was supposed to flirt and be cutesy, and I wasn't having it. And I read that audition so terse and pissy and tough. I brought my New York tough out to I didn't care who was in the room. I didn't care that it was Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg. I wanted them to know they had disrespected the entire acting profession by not apologizing for making us all wait 2 hours.
There you go.
And I left knowing I walked out of the room. I was like, didn't get that, and happy to leave. And John Levy, the casting director, came and he pulled me aside and he said, wait, you're not right for that part. And I went, you think? and he said, but you're perfect for Nurse Hathaway. She's a character that is only in the pilot because she dies at the end of the pilot, but you're perfect for her. Would you read for her? And I looked at him and I said, I don't do cold readings. I actually study the lines, know the lines, and go in prepared. And he just laughed at me and he said, well, take all the time you need. And I went into some quiet little room. I don't remember where it was. And I learned the lines as best I could. And I went in and I was still pissed. And I went in and I had the same kind of attitude and went away and screwed up the next auditions I had. Cause I just was like, you know what? I'm out of LA. I'm going home. I'm getting back to New York, back to the theater. This is crazy. I'm not doing this. It felt so degrading to me as a human being. And I got home and my agent called and said, you got the part. And I said, what part? What part could I have possibly gotten today? And she goes, ER, the Nurse Hathaway. And I remember thinking like, well, yeah, but I die. I mean, are they paying me anything? Because I needed a ticket home. And she said, $20,000 for the pilot. And I almost fainted. I was on my last dollar. And I was going to just do this pilot and be able to go home and have a pilot under my belt. And I had the best time on that pilot. I had so much fun. It was just a master class in acting with all those guys. George was fantastic. Anthony Edwards, Sherry Street, everybody. I just loved them all. And I had nothing to lose because, I was maybe, I don't know, people out there probably do know, but when you go into work on a show, there's a call sheet with all the actors' names. And the biggest part is number 1 on the call sheet, right? So when I was Alicia Florrick, I was number 1 on the call sheet. When I was Carol Hathaway in the pilot, I think I was number 47. Wow. There's like, there were so many actors. I was way down there. I didn't know what a call sheet meant. I didn't care. I was just having a ball. Yeah. And I went home and I said, good luck with everything. Bye. And George called me and said, I think you're going to live.
Wow. I love that.
So you don't know. It's like remembering.
You're going to live.
You're going to live. Like, don't, I happen to remember an agent I didn't even go with's birthday. That's how I met my husband.
I love that story.
I didn't know how,
I love when you said, all I did was remember his birthday. And because of that, you're married today.
I am married and I have the subtitle of the book, which is An Unexpected Life.
Yeah. Because
I never in a million years expected this.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the macaroons. I'm just going to say it.
Yes, it does.
But when you show that you care about other people,
yes,
it comes back.
Yes. And you know what? What struck me is it's the small things. It's the, happy birthday that lead to big things. But you have to do the small ones.
It's the small ones. Listen, you have to build the foundation. If you put a huge building on top of nothing, it's going to crumble.
Yeah, we learned that in Florida, right?
That is our life.
Yeah.
That is, I always love Yom Kippur for the sole reason for me to be able to reflect.
Yes.
To really be able to think about who I want to be to the world, how I want to be treated in the world, and who I want to and need to embrace, right? Because so often, it's the old Buddhist saying, which I love, which is, if you're walking down the street and you just smile, the person walking towards you is going to smile.
Yeah.
It's intoxicating.
Yeah.
And that smile is going to pass the next person walking. Before you know it, a whole block is smiling and no one really knows why, but it brings joy.
Sunshine, girl.
Right. Yeah. But there is something to that, right? You don't want to hang out with people that make you sad and miserable.
No. And you don't want to hang out with people who are embittered.
Right. Or take advantage of your joy.
Yes. Or who don't see you.
Right. Or who don't see you. And it is such an important lesson in life. I think it's why this time of year is so important. Also, just back east, at least. I mean, even, today it felt like autumn outside. It's been so hot and strange. And it's that fresh, that new beginning. I always love September because to me, even though I'm not in school anymore, I always think it's the beginning of the new year anyway, right? Of course, it's the right time for Yom Kippur. It has to be because we're starting over.
Yeah.
And that's what reflections do for me anyway.
Which kind of, I think maybe this is the last question. Although I do have one more, but maybe we won't.
You can keep asking. I'm good.
Your Judaism. It wasn't sort of Jewish practice. Obviously, not obviously, clearly it wasn't part of your upbringing. But it's very much a part of you now. And many people who are watching, there are people who are watching who have nothing to do with Neshuva, but many people who are watching are from Neshuva. And you guys should all know that Julianna was, I think, at the very first service or the second service, 17 years ago. Yeah. And I remember just locking eyes with you and you were crying. And I'd love for you to share what Judaism, what that experience meant to you and what Judaism has come to mean to you.
It's so interesting, Naomi, because you've been such an integral part of me finding that part of my life, which was denied to me as a child, even though both my parents are 100% Jewish. My mother converted to Christianity when she was 35. I was 4 or 5 years old. And my father married a Catholic woman and really believed in a lot of Rudolf Steiner's philosophies. So he wouldn't call himself Christian, but we celebrated Christmas. So Judaism was not a part of my life growing up, except when I would go to Passover at my aunt and uncle's house if we were in America. And I would feel so jealous of my cousins who would read from like when they would ask the 4 questions in Passover and they could answer in Hebrew, I was so jealous. I wanted to be a part of that group. I thought that was my family, but I felt like I was so far away from it because I didn't know anything about it. And so I just accepted that I was Jewish by blood, but I wasn't of the Jewish faith. And you and I were in the dog park talking about it. And I had never met a female rabbi ever. I had looked to find guidance when I was a sophomore in college through religion because I felt very lost and alone. And I had gone to a temple I found in New York thinking maybe I can find my people. Maybe I can find something that'll fill my heart. And I went and I found it to be very sexist. I just found all of it to be distasteful. I felt like I was not, as a female, let alone that I didn't know enough about Judaism, but I felt alienated as a female in that synagogue. And then I thought, well, maybe St. Patrick's is such a beautiful church. Maybe I'll find guidance there. So I went into a Sunday mass and the first thing the priest said was, "You've all sinned." And I was like, gee, okay, forget it. You know what? Religion's not for me at all. It's sexist. You don't know anything about me. Don't tell me I've sinned. I just felt angry at religion. And then you and I cut to when I'm 25 and we're in the dog park. And I said, wow, you are a rabbi? I couldn't believe it. And you said, yes, what are you doing for Passover? And I said, I don't celebrate Passover. And you said, oh, I'd love it if you came to our house. And I remember thinking, oh, I've got to sit through all those prayers. That's like a long time before you get to eat, you know, and I won't know anything. And you said, just come. And that's when I baked the macaroons and showed up at your door. I remember you had just had Audie. And I came, and it was there was, I think, like 20 of us around the table. We went from your kitchen into your living room. I mean, we were, you know, on folding chairs, and everyone brought a dish, and everyone went around and read something. And you led the most beautiful Seder. I think I was crying then, because there was something that hit me where I went, oh, I just wasn't introduced to it with open arms. I was introduced to it through anxiety, you know? And so when you started Neshuva, and I remember what a big deal that was when you left the synagogue and started Neshuva, and you asked us to wear white. It wasn't, you didn't say you have to, you just said it'd be lovely. And my father was visiting me in Los Angeles at the time. And I said, I'd love you to come see this rabbi who I've really found deep ties to Judaism through. She's given me a real sense of belonging. But I'd never been to a neshuva, and I'd never been to your synagogue before. I still felt very stifled by that kind of an institution. And I went with my dad. And here's where I'll tell you, neshuva changed my idea of what it means to go to a place to study Judaism, which is the music and the song. Because I remember going to all of my grandparents' funerals, and there was no music, there were no flowers, there was no joy, there was no celebration. It was so finite and dark and grim to me as a child going to these. When I walked into Neshuva and everyone was wearing white and the music started and you were singing, it just made me sob. Because I think it hit something where I realized it comes in all forms, you know, and what touches you is what's important, not what the scriptures say, not how it's meant to be taught, not how you're meant to receive it. It's the experience of being there and how you interpret it. And for me, it was so freeing. And then shockingly, I mean, I miss Neshuva, I have to say, I really miss it. But shockingly, then I married a Jewish man.
I love that.
and I remember him saying, you know, I want a chuppah, and I was like, well, okay. Like it wasn't really, it didn't matter to me. I was just happy that that I was pregnant, we were getting married, and it was beautiful. And we had to go to a rabbi in New York to talk about how we wanted the service. And I cried all through that. Every time he met with us, I mean, granted, I was hormonal and pregnant, but I just found it so moving, all of it so moving. And I felt like I had come so full circle in finding my roots.
Yes. And that you've come home.
And I've come home. And my son takes it very seriously. The tradition of Judaism, the familiarity of what happens on Friday nights when we say Shabbat Shalom, and it can be anything. We can just happen to, you know, we're going to actually all go eat out, but we do Shabbat together.
Yeah.
And Kieran knows what his job is. It's about tradition. It's about saying goodbye to the work week and hello to the weekend and to friends and family. That for me is everything. And I didn't grow up like that.
That, you know, you who really were raised in a very untethered way, spiritually and physically, that your son just became a bar mitzvah, which is all about grounding.
Yes, and just for those who are watching or care, it was quite, Naomi saved me yet again, because I was in a panic about having to say my Hebrew part. And I didn't, the actress in me had to do it perfectly. Little did I know, everyone was just reading it. I had memorized it. But thank you. I made her actually record it into I walked around New York City listening to Naomi reading my part. I loved it. Anyway, but it is full circle, and it gives us a real sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And I like my tribe. I like belonging to a tribe. And every Passover, our door is open to anyone who'd like to come and sit. And Kieran, our son, knows that. And it's important to us. And that's a tradition you passed on to me.
And you're passing it over.
I'm passing it over. Absolutely. And it's meaningful. It's meaningful on so many levels. And especially, I think, during this really brutal last year and a half, possibly the last 5 years, but it gives a sense of hope and a sense of meaning and a sense of belonging that I think makes us all stronger.
Well, I can't thank you enough for just taking the time to share your wisdom and your story and everything you've learned with all of us, so that we can learn from you, especially in Yom Kippur. And like I said, I want you all to get this book, because it really is a book that's a Yom Kippur type of journey. It's a journey into really knowing yourself and being honest about who you are in the world, and really what were the flaws in your life that you need to come to terms with.
Yeah.
And become whole. And God, thank you, sweetie.
Thank you. I love you. I love you so much.
Back. I love you. And I'm wishing everybody here an easy fast, and just that we both bless you, that it hasn't been an easy year. Let this new year be a year of health and blessings.
Love you.
Love you.